Uh, uh,
Mm.
no sleep pill. I've gotten to ask Evan about intro music, and they've got those pesky copyright strikes they'll hit you with. So
Yeah,
that's going to
no,
have
we
to
have to be
do.
safe.
How was that? Yeah.
No, it's they're
Was
coming
it
for you,
just ill or was it licensed to ill, that intro? You know?
and
Oh, jokes
oh, geez.
aside, we got a lot of Jaguar stuff to talk about, Evan. We've got the 2024 NFL draft in our rear view mirrors. No shortage of takes on who the Jags took and when they took them and sort of the movement that we saw during the 2024 NFL draft from the Jacksonville Jaguars. We'll sort of do a state of the union approach to this team
Yeah,
post draft because I think really it's fun to do the stuff real time, jump on, give takes. We all do that on social media and
sure.
elsewhere. But now that you've had 3, 4, 5, 6 days after the draft, the Jags have explored some other avenues too where personnel is concerned. So you can kind of bring it together, I guess, a little bit better than you can right on the heels of the draft.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I was kind of saying coming up to the draft was, there's an entire kind of free agency and trade window that opens up afterwards, and we've already seen the Jaguars kind of, having guys in for visits, all that different stuff. There's still a ton of moving pieces. I mean, we are going to be feeling the after effects of this for quite some time. I mean, it's we didn't have there were tons of rumors and stuff like that about big trades, T Higgins, Brandon Ayuk. Nobody really moved around. There was a lot of movement in the draft, including the Jaguars, but it was mostly just all picks and future stuff.
We talked about those scenarios going into the draft last
Yeah,
week. And what did we talk about? What would surprise us the most? The Jags trading up,
trading back.
the Jags sitting still, the Jags trading back. And of course, the one that surprised us the most, or we thought would surprise us the most, is exactly how it went down. Now, we did offer up the caveat that it's all dependent upon what happens sort of in front of you. You can have a plan, you can have your board or your tiers or your buckets
Right.
or however you go about it. But once that thing starts to unfurl, and there was a lot of talk that there was going to be all these trades in the first round and people were going to be moving this way and that way. Really didn't happen. But what did happen was a hell of a run on offensive players to crank that thing up,
Oh
quarterbacks,
yeah.
wide receivers, tackles. And so when it did get around to the Jags, and I know every team says this after the first round, it fell exactly the way we wanted it to. It did feel like it, though, when 17 was approaching, that Trent Baalke and the Jags were in a good spot, whether they were thinking corner, whether they were thinking wide receiver, or maybe another position.
Yeah, I think what that tells us, the trade back to 23 and in the selection of Brian Thomas, I mean, they must have really not been as big of fans of the corners available as we kind of maybe perceived them because I mean Terry Arnold was still available. I mean these guys that were linked to him heavily, and instead they go get a guy, Brian Thomas Jr. that was also linked to them heavily. If they went wide receiver, but I think that just kind of shows that they were always dead set on that. I think probably they did consider, all that story, all the stories we saw, all the chatter we saw about the Jags trying to trade up, maybe trying to get a Dunza or something like that. I think that's probably legitimate because they still went receiver despite trading back. And it, I mean, Brian Thomas at 23 versus 17, you definitely feel a little bit better about. We weren't coming into the first round. Me and you weren't, hyper excited for Brian Thomas. We're, not on big as on him as we are on some of the other guys. But I think if you're going to get a little bit more draft capital moving back, still getting a guy with a huge, really really high ceiling is definitely not a bad thing.
Yeah, we'll find out how much sense Brian Thomas made for the Jags in the first round in the years to come, obviously. But I think for Brian Thomas and a guy that runs sub 4.4, is 6'3", coming off a great year of production at LSU, I think number 23 overall for someone made a lot of sense for Brian Thomas. I don't
Right.
think I don't think that's a reach at 23 to go in on a guy like Brian Thomas.
No, absolutely not. I think you're taking a project there regardless. Don't get me wrong, there were definitely better players available. You can always do that kind of thing, but at the end of the day, you have to kind of not just draft for the moment, but draft for the future. That's probably the thing with this is Brian Thomas. His role, that what you expect him to do in this rookie season, honestly, out the gate, I'm not expecting a ton. Like I would love like a 700-yard season with like 6 touchdowns. Like be the red zone threat that we expect you to be. A nice high average yards per catch. But I do kind of think that this is one where it's like, okay, well, Gabe Davis isn't probably going to be around forever. Like if anything, it might just be this season. It could very well be just a season or two. No matter what happens this year, you at least have a guy that going forward you feel good about developing, or you feel good about what he could develop into. But yeah, I mean, you start to get a little nitpicky. I think overall, there's not another receiver they could have taken there that I would have felt like, oh, that's a much better pick. Like they had gone for, Adonai Mitchell, who fell, considerably further than I expected, or something like that. I wouldn't have felt that much better, to be honest.
Well, receiver felt sensible enough because you're all in on Trevor.
Yeah.
Obviously picking up his option along with Travis, you anticipated those things, but it sounds like an extension is imminent for
Yeah.
Trevor, and not more so down the road, but perhaps even before the start of the 2024 season. So you got to get this guy the help he needs to get where you want to go with him if you truly think he is the guy, and they obviously do, and for I think pretty good reason. But yeah, Brian Thomas, I think the key is going to be continued growth. I
Yeah.
followed him as a high school player, and what I also do with college football was well aware of him coming out of the high school ranks, coveted wide receiver recruit by just about any program out there that you can think of. Didn't really happen for him as much early in his career, although there were flashes. And then last year, pretty much comes together with Malik Neighbors on the other side, some other really good weapons in that LSU offense. So now you want to see him build on that. And a couple of things I think Brian Thomas can help you with also is not only yards per catch with him and his ability to stretch the defense and get it done in his own regard, but yards per catch for the other guys, for Gabe Davis,
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
Christian Kirk. If he can legitimately threaten the top end of the defense, that's going to open up a lot of things for some other guys, and also help Travis Etienne. Yards per carry
Yeah.
or something that could go up, because if you start having to help a little bit on a guy like that in the vertical passing game, that just benefits everybody else.
No, 100%. We had talked about how, Gabe Davis could, be a guy to high point the ball down the field. He's very well known for his ability to go win those deep jump balls. And that's an incredible skill to have, but he doesn't have speed like Brian Thomas does. And that is going to shift the dynamic of the offense, I think, considerably. It's not enough to just have a guy who's good at catching the ball downfield. You have to have a guy that every time he's on the field, corner safety has to be like, okay, like this guy could just he could just race me and beat me. Like I can't, it's just
Right.
not enough to recover. I have to fully set back. So no, it's exciting on paper, which is kind of what's interesting about this entire draft class is that I don't think the Jaguars really got better on paper. I mean, and that's how the NFL draft goes for most teams. It's not like a lot of times, like it's not, you're not picking Caleb Williams at number one. Like that's a clear, even that, actually, now I think about it, is he going to be better than Justin Fields? Who knows? So, this draft class, it's not like they added a lot of guys that you say, oh, wow, okay, now the Jaguars are better in this spot. But they've got some great depth options now in terms of, what these guys can be. Who knows? They may make an impact out the gate. But at the very least, I think the selections overall, Thomas kind of leading the way. When you get into those second and third, fourth rounds, like those guys that they got, like Mason Smith and Jerry Jones and Javon Foster, like I personally like those picks a lot. Like those guys aren't like guys that they're going to expect a ton out of, but I think that just giving them a year to work with those position groups that they're in, I do think that they can go somewhere.
Yeah, I think for Brian Thomas, it'll continue to be development of his all around game as a route runner. If not, he could end up being pretty much Laquan Treadwell with speed, which there's nothing wrong with that either. There's a place for that guy. But if he's a true number one in the future, what does the completion of the finer aspects of route running and those things look like?
Right. Yeah, sharpening that up.
Yeah.
No, he's people, Calvin Ridley was the one last year. I hope people are ready for a very different experience if Brian Thomas is the one, at least to open things up, because he does not have those skills necessarily, but he does. Again, sometimes we see it. Like just physical prowess can be enough, to be a threat. So.
Speaking of physical prowess, Evan, they're at number 48 overall in the second round. The Jacksonville Jaguars stick with Go Tigers.
Go
LSU's Mason Smith, the big man, bringing some John Henderson, Marcus Stroud vibes to the defensive line. I guess Eric Armstead too. I mean, you're talking about some DLs now on the interior in that 6'6" range.
Yeah, well, that's the bulky calling card. I mean, he is always like, since he was at the 49ers, like when the Jags selected Mason Smith, a bunch of the 49ers people I follow for my job, all were like, that is the most, print bulky pick in the world, because he's extremely tall and he's got very, very long arms. And he was also injured, which is another thing that bulky seems to love. He loves to get some value on that kind of thing. But I think Mason Smith, there were a lot of people that didn't have him high up. They didn't think he was like a top 50 pick or maybe even a second round pick in general. But I mean, it's kind of a similar deal to Brian Thomas. If this guy can fill out, like if he can develop and get the technical things down, this is potentially a very dangerous player.
And it's a guy that, when the 2024 season gets underway, he will be almost exactly 2 years removed from that knee injury that he sustained very early in the season opener against Florida State in New Orleans back in 2022. So I think his best football is definitely in front of him. I think this is a guy that if he doesn't injure the knee early in 2022 as a 3 and out in this draft, he's probably a top 25 pick. So yeah, I think there's the potential for great value there. I've heard the description boom or bust. Well, I think if he busts out as a 48th pick, I don't think that's as damaging as if you had taken him 20th or 15th or something like that. But a lot of upside with Mason Smith, a guy that coming out of the high school ranks, again, like Brian Thomas, everybody wanted this guy heading to the college level. What about with that third round pick, 96th overall, Jarian Jones from Florida State, Evan? Obviously a guy who's played slot corner, can play some outside as well, but I think it's pretty obvious what the Jags have in mind with bringing him in.
It seems, honestly, it feels like a full-on commitment to the nickel. Like, I mean, that's just kind of his whole profile. Like, is this is a guy that definitely looks like he's set up to play on the inside. And it's funny too. Like when the Jags drafted him, that was kind of on a run on like nickel corners. Like a bunch of different guys with that kind of profile had all just been selected because they had passed over all those different kind of supposedly out and out like outside corners in the first and second round. I don't hate the pick. Again, another one that like when you go look at like people's different draft boards, a lot of people kind of think that this was a guy that was probably going in round 4, if not round 5. But at the end of the day, the Jaguars need new blood in that secondary, and they've got a good group that I think could teach a guy like Jarian Jones to succeed with Darnell Savage coming in. he's a guy who plays nickel and safety. That's a nice little combo there, in terms of getting, maybe getting him a few lessons. And then also on top of that, when you bring in a guy like Ronald Darby, who's played in Super Bowls, done it all, and Tyson Campbell's no spring chicken at this point. I mean, he's not, old or anything, but he's also not a rookie, by any means. So, I like the idea of this pick. Do I kind of wish that they had gone corner in the second round instead? Yeah, but I still they had to go get one at some point. I think.
Sounds too though, Evan, like they tried to maybe get back up, didn't it?
Yeah, there was some talk about that for sure.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I like the idea, and I like that Jones did some really good things, especially last season in Tallahassee at that spot. Is he ready to jump into this level of football from day one? You've got some insurance there with Savage and maybe some other guys that you can work at that spot. And if he isn't, if Jones isn't from day one, you can bring him along at a reasonable rate. But if you do take a guy in the third round, that's still high enough to at least.
That's the guy you expect to make the roster.
Yeah, certainly make the roster. And I think in today's football, make an impact. Third round, 96 pick. I get it. It's not the end of the world if he isn't the day one guy in the slot at the corner, but I don't think they're going to bring him in and kind of just say, well, don't worry about winning a job this year. I think they're hoping in the third round, they ended up getting a guy who can jump right in there and get the job done. I was looking at this, Ev, and of the Jags' first 8 picks in this draft, 7 from the Southeastern Conference, because I'm including Texas in there with Keelan Robinson. Texas, of course, joining Oklahoma and making that jump to the SEC. But the SEC theme carried over after a brief respite. I guess you could say even the one pick,
future SEC team, SEC team, FSU,
a team that at least wants to be in the SEC, an SEC wannabe, SEC wannabe, Florida State.
SEC, what's the term that they use in fraternities? SEC pledge. FSU is a pledge.
Right now, they're pretty much they'd take being a GDI if they could.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything.
But let's get into those mid-round picks. 4th round, a couple of big guys for the Jags, one on both sides of the football. You do go corner in the 5th round with DeAndre Prince out of Ole Miss. We talked about the Texas pick and Keelan Robinson previously of Alabama. A lot of speed. When I heard that pick, or I saw that pick in the 5th round, I thought return game, because Keelan can do that. He's also a nice sort of change up at the running back position. Then you get into a specialist in Cam Little in the 6th round. Miles Cole is a linebacker, potentially a special teamer, I would think, as well. Some special teams flavor to these last few picks, but just your impressions really from the 4th round through Miles Cole there in the 7th of what the Jags were able to get done.
I'm very stoked about Javon Foster. The more I've learned about him, like after the selection, because while I've watched Missouri a little bit over the past couple of years, I haven't really noticed him. There is a lot to like about this team. And I think this could end up being, a pick that, again, may not be a year one thing, but I think the Jaguars are probably fully committed to him as, kind of the primary backup tackle besides Walker Little. I think those are going to be the year 2. And I think Javon Foster could honestly play on either side and potentially move up the ranks above Walker Little, depending. I know that sounds crazy because, Walker Little is perceived as a guy competing with Cam Robinson for a job. But at this point, I think with Little, you have to say, he hasn't won the job. Like, he hasn't made his case really. So Foster's very exciting to me. With Jordan Jefferson out of LSU, another DL out of LSU, I think that's just the Jags saying, to Ryan Nielsen and Matt House, like, hey, like, we're getting guys that know you, that know your system. Jefferson is not like a super exciting pick. Pretty early for a guy like that, for, a nose tackle, I think that has that much work to do. But still, who knows?
You got to have
But
guys like that, though. I mean,
yeah, you do.
and that's about where you go get them. Typically,
Yeah,
I think early down
yeah,
nose tackle, middle rounds. That's where you probably target those and hope you get some value there. Same with Javon Foster. I like your comments there on him because you got a couple of tackles you're about to have to make some decisions on too, in terms of the
yeah,
big
absolutely.
picture. So the hope obviously that Foster not only comes in and gives you immediate depth, but perhaps in the fourth round, you find a guy that you can ride with in the coming years, perhaps even as a starter. You knew one of my favorite picks was going to be Cam Little of Arkansas, right? You knew I'd like
Yeah,
the kicker
absolutely.
pick. We
Yeah,
talked about this before the draft. There were some mocks that had our guy, Will Reichard of Alabama, going
would
in
have
the
been
fifth
nice.
round to the Jags. Well, Will went sixth round to the Vikings, but he kind of started that run on kickers as the first one off the board.
Mm,
We are unabashed Will Reichard fans here on No Sleep
we
2.
love him.
That being said, if you ask me, Will Reichard or Cam Little, who has the more Justin Tucker like upside? I'd have to tell you Cam Little, man. This dude, he's a 3 and out too, Evan. You don't see that with kickers. Kickers typically redshirt year 1 and then stick around for the next 4 years. It's usually a 5-year deal with kickers. This dude is a 3 and out and he can absolutely bomb it. And based on
Yeah.
his interviews after getting drafted, there's no shortage of confidence there for Cam Little.
Oh yeah, no, you love to see that. That's that was exactly what I wanted to hear. Now, when he kind of shanks the opener, at week one, we'll
Hey,
reassess. But no, I mean, there's a lot to like about this dude because not only can he bomb it, but this guy is knocked down. Did not miss an extra point in
yeah,
3 seasons at Arkansas. I mean, just does everything correctly. And yeah, I mean, shoot, if he can make a 59 yarder, that's awesome. I also want a guy that isn't going to miss extra points. We think about Jason Myers. Jason Myers had some
mm,
nice moments for the Jags, but he missed like 5 extra points in a season and got cut. I don't want that to happen to Cam Little. I don't think it will happen. I definitely like the pick. Yeah, it would have been nice to get Reichard, but what can you do? I mean, it's you never know when that run on kicker or run on any position is going to start, and you just got to go with the wave once it began. I don't really have much to say about DeAndre Prince or Miles Cole, but I will say Keelan Robinson is very exciting. I like the idea of if you roll with like maybe like 3 backs on the roster, and then maybe like Dearness Johnson or Robinson maybe on the practice squad. You can maybe get away with that with Robinson on the practice squad. It's probably gonna have to be Johnson. But if you do Keelan Robinson, Tank Bigsby, ETN, and Dearness Johnson, I think that's a really nice kind of spread out skill set. Yeah, Tank Bigsby and Dearness Johnson are pretty similar, but Bigsby was so nerve wracking last
yeah.
year that I think you kind of have to have, if you're going to keep Bigsby, you have to keep a similar guy to him as well. Robinson is something they don't have, though. I mean, I know ETN is fast, but he's really not like breakaway speed guy. Like he's very much a lateral quickness guy. I think Robinson's the type of dude that if he gets to the second level, it might be one move and gone.
Keelan,
But
Keelan's one
yeah,
of those guys with the changes to the kickoffs too. He may not get drafted if they're not
yeah,
making those changes.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah. The
I think
proper
he
kick
benefited.
return, like
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
even
you're
with his
seeing that a
speed, he
lot.
has great speed. But yeah,
You're seeing that a lot already, where you see plenty of teams making what seem like clear moves to say we are getting a guy set up for this new kick return because no one's ever had to cover it. Like I think honestly, I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, we have the potential to see like the most kick returns for touchdowns in NFL history. Like because no one's ever covered this. Like I know these are pros. I know these are pros we're talking about. We're not talking about kids like running out their popcorn or they don't know what they're doing. But we're gonna find out exactly what type of guy succeeds in that role. And yeah, Robinson has the speed and the kind of shiftiness to definitely be a problem.
and what you think of the talent level of NFL players, you think, well, covering kicks, But you know what? A lot of these guys didn't cover kicks in college,
Yeah,
and you've
they
got
don't
a
have the
condensed
experience doing that.
roster, 50, 55 guys. You may, and that's why you pick the way you pick more in the latter rounds too. Like you saw the Jaguars sort of approach it. Um, Special teams coverage and return to a lot of guys in the NFL isn't something they maybe spend a lot of time doing at college. It's like high school kids that go from there to college and then they're introduced to covering kickoffs, running backs like Derrick Henry, going from high school and
Yeah,
now he's going to cover a kickoff.
yeah,
That can be new even at that level as well. So we work through the draft. We come out of the draft and then some news, I guess not all that surprising, given the first round pick, given the sixth round pick. Zay Jones and Joey Sly released here in the last couple of days. And I know, Evan, financially, that opens up some things even more for this Jaguar organization.
yeah. The Zay Jones cut is not surprising at all. We kind of figured that if there was a receiver that was honestly, it didn't even have to be first round. If it was like a second round receiver, or if they made another trade for another receiver, that Jones would be the guy to go. There was chatter online that the Jags tried to trade Zay during the draft, before the draft, even after, and I don't think anybody really wanted to deal with that salary
Number.
from this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I like when the Jags signed Zay Jones, people were like, "Oh wow, they overpaid for him too," like just like they did with Christian Kirk, which was true to a degree. But overall, I thought that the deal was good, and especially that first season, man. I mean, Zay had 850 yards, like 6 touchdowns. For a number two receiver, that's kind of what you're looking for. Um, but he, at the end of the day, he was definitely surplus to requirements at that point. And yeah, cutting him opens up like I think close to $5 million more is what I saw. It does. There's a slight dead cap penalty, but it's totally fine because the Jaguars have like I think $31 million in effective cap space according to Over the Cap. That is the third most in the NFL. Yeah, quite a bit of money to work with if they want to do something like that. The extension for Trevor Lawrence comes to mind, but also let's say they think that they could still go add a big piece, via trade or something. They can afford to do that. They can afford to trade and sign for somebody if they wanted to. Who that would be, I don't know where you go or what you do at this point. But yeah, I think I like Zay. I appreciate his time in Jax, but especially after last year with the injury issues and only got in the field like 9 times, it was kind of a no brainer.
Yeah, Joey Sly, I figured they maybe just move him over to AEW with a name like that.
Yeah,
That's
Joey
like
Sly
that's
makes me
old
think.
school
Yeah,
ECW, Joey Sly. He could have taken on the
Joey Sly.
Sandman back in the day. Just
Yeah,
incredible, you know.
take a kendo stick to the back.
Oh,
Uh,
Jags make a move. What about Jarvis Landry talk? What about that?
oh man, yeah, that's pretty LSU.
Uh,
We're really the LSU Jaguars. I mean, it's nuts. It's funny because we used to like. Seems like the Jags have really locked in on
Go
different schools over the
Jaguars.
years.
Yeah.
Like go Jaguars.
Need
Jarvis Landry. I don't know what he offers at this point. Like I don't like I the whole thing is that he's just coming through for literally the rookie camp. Like I mean they're like it's not even like he's signing a deal or anything. He's literally
yeah.
just visiting.
Seeing if
Um,
he's got
so
anything left in the tank. Anything.
yeah, and I mean that's cool. I mean I like the idea of it. Did you know something I did not realize of like qualifying like receivers with like 100 plus catches over the past decade? Jarvis Landry has the lowest like catch point downfield. His
Yeah.
average catch is like 4 yards
That's
downfield.
never been his thing. No.
Yeah.
But he and Odell
Uh,
Beckham together at LSU,
well, that's what I was going
they
to
were
say.
the
Is like
truth.
that.
Yeah.
That's what's funny is that like Odell became known for being the
That was
crazy
Odell's
circus
best
catch guy.
football. Yeah.
But like if that Jarvis Landry had like catch of the season or whatever against Arkansas back in the day, like
That
the
one
like back in
hander
the end
behind his
zone, like
head.
he.
Yeah.
I mean, when they were both coming out, everybody thought Jarvis Landry was like, yeah, this was going to be the guy, and they both ended up having careers that I wouldn't necessarily, match the height, but still, both,
Maybe you check out Jarvis
have their
just in
moments.
case. I mean, depth at wide receiver is a little bit of a concern. I think you go into this feeling like you got your top three, and then you start thinking about 4 or 5. And
Yeah,
you may
I
revisit
think
that at some point.
I think really it's a question on if they go with 6 receivers or not.
Yeah.
Because Kirk, Davis, Thomas, Duvernay, I think those are locked in. And you have at least one more guy coming with that, right? So, uh, you have Parker Washington. Jarvis Landry could be in the mix. Tim Jones, I guess, is in the mix, but would not really. I don't see him winning that
Laquan
battle. And then,
Treadwell,
you also
forever
have
in the
to
mix
now,
with the Jags, potentially.
yeah. You also have to consider, we haven't not talked about the UDFA class at all, but
Yeah.
you also have 5 new UDFA receivers coming in the mix, which one of them that I think you've seen a lot of talk about is Joshua Cephas out of UTSA. Dude is a stud, at least at the UTSA level.
Documented
He
production, 2 words. Yeah.
Dude, 3 straight seasons with 800 yards or more, 22 touchdowns over the past 3 seasons. I mean, I understand that it's UTSA; they're not playing the best competition in the world, but this is a guy that literally has just produced nonstop for basically 3 years, and he's got 5 total years of experience. Also 6'3", 195. I
Yeah.
mean, it's nice build.
Catch
So
radius. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So there is, he's in the mix too. I mean, if they had points last year where they had 6 receivers on rosters, so I think that's a very real possibility. Landry making it, even if he gets signed, I still am like, man, I just don't see what, like the last time I watched him play,
Yeah.
like
No.
I think
I
he's
don't
just
think
gassed.
there's
I think he's
yeah, it's like you said, he never was a dynamic vertical guy to begin
and
with.
now he's
So,
32.
yeah. Yeah.
Or soon to be 32, excuse me.
You know,
So,
this
yeah, it's just
with all this LSU, you know what we got to do, right? Home opener, you got to bring in Coach O to have him do the
yeah,
Duval,
Duval,
rip his
baby.
shirt off up there,
Yeah,
shoot a
let's
beer,
go.
shotgun a beer. It's got to happen.
That's for some reason I'm just like if Doug gets fired, let's just go the Urban Meyer route again and just burn it all
Bring
down
in
with
O.
Ed.
Yeah.
I'm down. We'll at least have a good time,
Yeah.
I mean,
See Ed
you're
out
gonna
there at
have
the
a good
hot
time when
corner.
Ed's around.
See Ed out there at the hot
Yeah.
corner. Yeah, you see
Oh
Urban out
man,
there. So what's the difference?
Ed's got to have a condo in Ponte Vedra. He probably already does. I
He
mean, he
is a
must.
big Gulf Coast guy. You know that. You know the
Yeah.
LSU people,
He's
man.
out in he's out on
30A.
30A.
Ed's
Yeah.
more airbrush shirt at Panama City Beach than he is
Yeah,
30A.
PCB. He's just cycling through Pensacola, PCB, Gulf
Club
Shores,
La Vila. Yeah.
and then out to Biloxi, of course, as well. So,
On the way
uh,
back. Yeah, you got to get some
yeah, gotta
bags.
hit the casino.
Yeah.
Yeah, gotta get some action.
Just leave it
Um,
to Coach O though to get us off course here on No Sleep Till. Hey,
hey, he's
anything else strike you as we move out of the draft and get more into some of the off-season work and think about the possibilities for this team and maybe some other teams within the division, the AFC South, Houston, Indianapolis. Your thoughts on Tennessee Titans going big with J.C. Latham there in the first round at the offensive tackle position. Just how some other teams that directly impact the Jags might have fared here in the last week or so.
Well, I will say when it comes to the divisions draft classes, I again like it makes no sense to see like in a rivals draft class and go, oh man, we're in trouble. It's like, yeah, they can have a good draft class, but this is all just projections. Like at the end of the day, like there's no reason to get nervous or to also on the other end of things to say, oh, like they have no chance, like they completely whiffed. But what I will say is that nobody's draft class in the division made me really kind of react either way. I was just kind of like, yeah, that all makes sense. I think Latham for the Titans is a great fit. You mentioned him, like that makes a lot of sense. They needed a big guy. They
They're
needed
putting guys
somebody that
around
is,
Levis, aren't they? I mean, they're trying to prop
yeah.
up
I mean,
Levis as much as they can.
they well, I think part of that is because they want to be able to bail this year if they need to.
Yeah.
Being able to bail year two. If you want to do that, you still kind of have to have a roster that you can transition out of fairly
Already had
quickly.
the
And there's
infrastructure in there. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So that's going to be something to watch. Uh, I think in general, I would say that the draft was exactly what people said it would be, which was after the top 50 picks, there
Yeah.
was not a lot of consensus.
No.
There was a lot of different it seemed
That's how
like
you get a
constantly that
Jarian
people were
Jones in the 3rd round, and guys
right,
like that. It
exactly.
may end up being great, but the bottom line is
But
we don't know about so many of these guys. More than usual, it
yeah,
seemed like.
for sure, for sure. I think the Colts getting Mitchell, Adonai Mitchell at in the 2nd round. I like that makes a ton of sense too. Now they've got 3 kind of receivers that you kind of are a little worried about with Pittman Jr., Josh Downs, and
It's
him.
become a wide receiver
Um,
division now, besides
oh,
the
it's an
AFC South.
arms race. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
full on arms race in the AFC South right now, and honestly, credit to the Titans for trying to keep up. I mean, uh, it's because it's kind of wild what the Texans and Jaguars and the Colts are doing at the moment. Yeah, so I think overall, I nothing too crazy with the division. With the quarterbacks that went in the first, I think that was the order I expected. I still think Jaden Daniels is the guy I like the most of that group, but we'll see. He's going to a Commanders organization that has ruined quarterbacks before,
New
so
ownership.
uh,
New ownership.
yeah, we're not going to
Finally got
RG3 you,
Dan
buddy.
out of
Don't.
there. Yeah.
I swear, if I see Jaden Daniels playing injured at any point this year, I'm going to have
Ooh,
PTSD to Robert Griffin
RG3.
III, and
Yeah.
that's people. Oh man, the amount of people. This is complete random tangent. I'm going to just say this real quick. The amount of people online that trash RG3 and are like, "Yeah, dude, you were a bum." Dude, go watch. Go watch, man. Like
Yeah.
that rookie season, like
You got
he was
Shanahan.
ready.
Yeah.
He got Shanahan. And Kyle is the one that has to pay for his dad's sins. But no,
Super Bowl
it's
curse.
Super Bowl curse. Yeah. But no. Also, I love the 49ers getting Pearsall as well. I like that pick a lot. I know that he went higher than a lot of people thought, but it's the 49ers. They can draft, freaking, the water boy, and it's going to turn out. So, yeah, that's kind of my only other thoughts that come to mind. What about you? Anything?
Oh, I'm good, man. It's been a lot of
All
fun
right.
as always. I think we got it in at
Absolutely.
least for this week, and we look forward to doing it again next week. If you haven't already, like and subscribe our YouTube home here, Grateful Sports Food Travel on the YouTube. Yeah, we put all kinds of stuff on this channel. We like to have a lot of fun here. Evan,
Chicken
great
salad.
job. Y'all, the chicken salad reviews. We'll do a
I'm
Pops
jealous.
on Point. We're due for a Pops on Point. It's been about a month or so. I got to catch up with him. A little bit of
We got
golf
to get him on
here.
this show too.
Yeah, we can do that. We can go try box with Pops. How about that?
Try box.
With Pops.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, we'll have to send that link to Nana and she'll get him set up on that desktop.
Jeez.
You know?
Yeah. That might be one where you have to have him like come over. Like he has to just come over and then
We'll
like pan the camera over. Yeah.
over my shoulder on the couch.
Yeah, exactly. Just that'd be perfect.
Oh, so many possibilities, Ev. But as always, enjoyed it. Look forward to doing it again real soon.
All right.
For Evan Ryer, Travis Ryer, thanking you again for joining us right here on No Sleep Till. And until next time, so long, everybody.